Hello, and welcome to Family Services of Southeast Texas video series on sexual assault. My name is Gina Abbott. Today, we're going to be discussing navigating your child's sexual abuse. So you've just been informed that your child has been sexually abused and your world is spinning. You are unable to just process the information you have been handed. You're feeling so many emotions at one time that you are just incapable of processing any emotions at all. You're lost and you don't know who to turn to or what your next step should be. Family Services of Southeast Texas is here to help. Your first step is to report the abuse. As parents, we are mandatory reporters of abuse. You may report to either law enforcement or Child Protective Services. In reporting this abuse, we start putting in the needed measures to keep your child safe and to start the journey to healing. There are going to be some other processes that will happen after we report abuse. One of those processes will be the SANE exam or the sexual assault nurse exam. Sexual assault nurses have extensive specialized training and are certified in the care of people who have experienced violence. They are available 24/7, and they have a specialized area to perform these exams. So you will not have to sit in the emergency room. They have a private area just for these victims. And evidence can be collected up to 120 hours, 5 days after the event. But even if it's outside that window, an exam still does need to be completed. It's also important as parents that we realize and know that even in children that are too young to have a period, that they did not insert anything into their vagina during these exams. Another process that we will discuss is the forensic interview. So forensic interviews are performed by professionals who are certified to conduct and ask questions with children of trauma. In these interviews, the parents will not be able to be present. They will be in the facility somewhere, but they will not be able to be seen or will not be able to hear the child in the interview process. The child will also go through an abuse or trauma assessment. In this trauma assessment, they will do a rating for the trauma, and they will also kind of do like a baseline mental health / psychological evaluation to rate to see if the child is in need of mental health services and do a recommendations / treatment plan for that child. Let's talk therapies. First, you know your child better than anyone else, and this list is only suggested for those people who have experienced trauma. As you go through the list, choose those that are intended for your child. And some of these therapies will have a lengthy wait list, so I encourage you to inquire on them as soon as possible. First, trauma CBT or trauma cognitive behavior therapy. In trauma cognitive behavior therapy, they are going to process the trauma, the narrative of events of the trauma, and how it affects their thoughts, their behaviors, and their lives. And it will also go in to address those distorted behaviors and beliefs and the learned skills that come from the trauma that they have experienced. So it's going to work into the deeper layers of the trauma and their behaviors and their inner workings of their thoughts. Play therapy. The child sits with the therapist and will play, usually with a dollhouse or cars or games and puzzles. And the way the play therapy will work is that while they're playing, it just like clears that freeway of their mind and allows the trauma and the therapy to work and to talk through what they need to talk through because their mind is busy on the play. Art or music therapy. This is creative forms of therapy. And in music therapy, it allows the mind to flow. It's going to slow the body's rhythm, alter the mood of the person, and can influence the person's behavior. In art therapy, it's going to help the place in the brain where the trauma seems to get stuck. And in this therapy, it's going to work through the trauma and allow the victim to cope with it. We also have equine or horse therapy. And in this therapy, we're going to talk about what they see or observe with the horse in an objective lens and translate how they themselves may be projecting feelings and thoughts. So they're going to kind of discuss what they're seeing with the horse and how that is projecting with themselves. So it's kind of an objective discussion of therapies. Yoga and meditation. So that it's a relaxation and a release of stress and tension in the body. The goal is all of these therapies is to release the cortisol or lower the cortisol levels in the body. And cortisol is the stress hormone in the body. And that is our list of therapies. So let's move to court. I must throw the disclaimer that I am not a lawyer and I'm not here in any legal capacity. We are here to generally discuss what we could expect in court. We all strive for justice and we want the best for these children. And the truth is that not all cases will be chose to be prosecuted. And many cases will be plea bargained. Prosecution is looking for a win, whether that be a big win or a little win. A win is a win for the prosecution. And the prosecutor's office will also have a victim assistance unit. And they will be able to kind of help guide you as a victim of crime through some of those legal avenues that's going on with court. And they will also help align you with some of the questions that you may have about court and what to expect with the court programs that's going on. However, do not think just because you already have a sexual abuse or sexual assault advocate that you do not need the victim advocate. Let them both work for you. The more people you have on your team, the better you are going to be. Plea bargain, though, is a very real occurrence in these cases. So be very prepared to hear about a plea bargain. Should your case not go to plea bargain, it will go to trial. Special testimony is not a given in children's cases. It's not automatic. So you have to meet certain criteria and statutes to be awarded special testimony. And if you do not know what a special testimony is, that means that you don't testify in the courtroom. You will they'll do a deposition before the trial, and then the videotape of the deposition will be played at the trial. So that way the child does not have to actually sit on the witness stand and answer questions and give testimony at the court itself. Or they can actually be in another room and then it'll stream into the courtroom while the jury and the judge and everyone is sitting in the courtroom. So the lawyers and stuff will be in one room and then it'll feed into the courtroom. So that was a couple of the situations in which a special testimony could be done. So it's not always given. I think that it's actually a very small percentage of time that it's actually where a special testimony happens. If you do not get a special testimony, you can request a closed courtroom in which no one is allowed in the courtroom, but the child's therapist, the child's parents, and the defendant and the lawyers. Like, you can kick everybody out of the courtroom except the court reporters and the judge. It'll take it down to the bare minimum of people in the courtroom. You can request a therapy dog be in the courtroom. You can request the child be able to hold a familiar toy or something that's very meaningful for them while they're testifying. And that their therapist be present in the courtroom as well for them, as to help bring them comfort and keep them anchored during the trial. The victim assistance unit at the courthouse should offer to familiarize the child with the courtroom before trial, because that is this very scary thing for the children, is that they don't understand court and they don't know what happens there, or it's just a very vast unknown for them. So they should suggest, if not, I encourage you as the parent to advocate as well for your child, to say, we need a tour of the courtroom. We need a field trip to the courthouse. We need to see where the judge sits. We need to know where the jury's going to be, where the bad, where the bad guy's going to be, where is the child going to sit, and kind of run through some questions and stuff like, what is your favorite subject and what's your favorite game to play in gym time, or PE, and just allow them to sit in a box and experience it some. So that way it's not so unknown to them. And a good victims assistance unit or victim advocate for the court will already set that up and will allow that to happen. Juries. Let's talk juries. We live in a day of, Law and Order and CSI, and everyone has a broadcasting bachelor's of criminal justice and law. And everyone is expecting to be as they see on TV. And although it is very entertaining for us, at home, it has been very detrimental to the court systems. And everyone expects it to be as they have seen on TV. And the truth is, it just does not happen that way. And this greatly affects how cases play out in court, especially sexual abuse cases and sexual assault cases. And people will come in with biases. And because it didn't go down like they saw on Law and Order or SVU, then they feel that there's fraudulent charges here. And that is just the reality of it. It is very hard to get a unanimous jury verdict in these cases. And then many times it just depends on how close the jury was when it was a hung jury as to whether or not you're granted a retrial. So then you're back to the whole plea bargain situation. So, these cases are never easy in court. And that is one of the things that you will hear over and over again from prosecutors, from judges, from, defense attorneys. Everyone in general says these cases are never easy in court. Sentencing. Let's discuss sentencing. So in sentencing, whether it got there by trial or it got there by plea bargaining, we all end at sentencing. In sentencing, you're going to do victim impact statements. One is going to be by your child, if your child is old enough to write a letter. If not, I would encourage you to let your child say, if they're old enough to vocalize what they say, they can say and have you write it, or even have a neutral party write it. So that way it takes you as the parent or a family member out of the equation and have someone neutral write the statement. So that way it holds more, because what's going to happen is it's going to be a pre-sentence investigation is what it's called. And just have your child write a statement as to what this did to them, how it affected them, and how it's affected their life. How did it change them? And then you yourself as parents will write a letter, a victim impact statement. And you are going to say everything. There are no secrets here. And you're going to say the good, the bad, the ugly, everything that you've witnessed, the before, what they were like before, what they were like after, everything that you have dealt with, everything that you feel like, is becoming a problem. You're going to put it all out there. And I know that in the past that we as a society have been very hush hush about abuse, about mental health, and especially about sexual abuse. But I promise, as this is not the time for that, because anything that you leave out and anything that you keep taboo, you're only helping the person who's abused your child. They need to hear and they need to see everything that this has done to your child. And this is not something that they read out loud in court. This is just something that the pre-sentence investigator has, and the judge will read it. And the lawyers read it, but it's beyond that. It's not like it doesn't, there's not someone there reading it out loud to the public or anything like that. And what this does is it helps them calculate the extent of how the event has affected the victim. And it helps determine the length of the sentence based on the charge that they are found guilty of. And then after the sentencing, or it's actually kind of like at the end of sentencing, they will talk about restitution. And in restitution, you will be able to seek restitution or money back for losses caused to you and your child from the abuse. And that means lost wages, travel expenses, childcare expenses, due to having to go to any appointments, whether that be doctor's appointments, the interviews, the exams, court appointments, hearings, travel expenses, all of that. If you've had to pay out of your pocket for them, or you've lost money because you've had to take off work for any of that, keep track of all of that because it will be sought out in restitution at sentencing, and you will be able to be repaid those things. And like I said, in all of this, I am not a lawyer. I'm just generally speaking of what to expect as a whole as you can go through in the court systems. So now that we have court talk out of the way, let's talk about how you navigate as a parent for your child and your family ahead. First up is communication. Keep those communication lines open, but don't overtalk the subject. Empower your child. Allow them to be the one that brings the topic up. Let them know that you're there to talk about it, but only when they need to talk about it or they have questions about it. Let them know that feelings are okay and that you're there to support them, and that most importantly, that you believe them. That is the most important sentence that you will say to your child going through this whole process is, I believe you. I am so sorry this happened to you, but I believe you. And allow them to say if they're overwhelmed with something and they need a break. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can stop what they're going through. It's not like you can quit therapy or that you can ghost a court appointment, but just say, let's just take 10 minutes and just stand here and let's just breathe. Let's just focus on something else and let's just breathe. So have some of those coping strategies on your cup. Deep breaths in, deep breaths out, or have something to distract, a fidget toy, or let's stop and color a picture for 5 minutes. Something to distract the anxiety or whatever is got them overwhelmed, and let them refocus on something else. So just allow them to be overwhelmed. Understand this is a lot, especially for them. It's a lot for you. And that's okay. It's okay to be a lot, but we have to take a break and then refocus. This battle is different than anything you've ever been through, but fight it wisely. Don't fight it emotionally. Things are going to pop up and you're going to want to impulsively respond. Instead, say, I just need a minute. Just give me a minute and collect yourself, collect your thoughts, and then respond. And that's okay. That's the way that you need to respond to these things. No one is expecting you to respond right away to something. And this is not just about your child. Your child is important in this journey, but it's not just about your child. You and your family need to heal as a whole. This event affects the whole family, and everyone needs to be addressing it. Everyone needs to be talking amongst each other, like having conversations. It's not just about a mom talking to therapists about it, or a mom discussing it with doctors. Dad needs to have input if dad is not offending, and dad needs to be letting the child know that he's supporting it. It needs to be a whole family that is addressing that they are supporting this child. Marriage counseling, is important if you aren't seeing eye to eye, or you as a married couple need to go to marriage counseling to discuss the issue as a unit, to know that your spouse sees this the same way you do, and the issues that are going to come from this. So that way you're presenting yourself as a unified front and you're supporting your child together, and you're not like all over the place in coming forth to your child with things. Lastly, I just want to say, heal yourself. There is indirect trauma that comes from your child being abused. Find a therapist for yourself so that way you can help yourself process the trauma. If you can't process it yourself, you can't be your best self to help your child. You need to process what's happened in your own thoughts and feelings with it. And then you need to process how that affects your child and your family. And you need to be able to cope and create strategies and systems yourself to deal with issues as they are coming up and be able to proactive in what may come in the future. I also wanted to let you know that we at Family Services, we have a parent support group that meets once a week for parents of sexually abused children. It is a peer-to-peer group, so it is not a therapy group. We are all parents sitting in a group together, just discussing what we have been through in this journey, what we are seeing as parents. Like, have you seen this? Or, what did you do when your child did this? And it's just kind of a bouncing back and forth of what we have seen in a collaboration of parents who are going down this journey together to help support each other as we're going along the road. So, moving forward, I can tell you that there is no cure for trauma, that trauma is a lifelong event. However, by completing these steps, you are helping your child process the trauma instead of being stuck in it. And you're giving them coping strategies for when issues arise in their future. And we here at Family Service are here to help you and your family to come out as healthy as possible and to be of service to you. We thank you for your time.